Hey everybody, this is Les and Christy, and this is the Easy Farms Podcast, where we are doing things from the ground up. We're here to help guide your homesteading adventure and hopefully make the journey a little easier.
Hello everyone, we just want to welcome back today. Today I'm going solo. Les has got a project today and he needs to really be working on that. It is going to be our next chicken coop. It is an Eggmobile chicken tractor, and some of y'all are really familiar with that. That is just where we tractor the chickens along our pasture, where we have a open grid bottom where the poo will fall to the ground and build the soil, put back into the soil the nitrogen and nutrients and everything it needs to eventually, when the chickens come back around on it and the sheep come back around on it, the soil has grown, the weeds, I'm just going to say it for lack of scientific understanding, basically the weeds and the nutrients come back even stronger. So he's outside doing that today. It takes several weeks to build this. We've got 400 chickens on order, baby chicks, Rhode Island Reds, to build our egg business that we've already got going. And the deadline is coming up, and so he needs to get that taken care of today. He does miss being here with us, so I'm going to go solo, and this is my first time to do that. Bear with me. I do appreciate it. Today, before we talk about today, I'll go ahead and give you updates on the farm. We have, we don't have a whole lot of farm updates. Everything is going kind of smooth. No new babies. Nothing really going on. All the puppies have been sold. We're thankful for that. We do that. That is an update. We do have homes for every one of them. Very pleased with where they're going. We did decide to get Emma fixed. And I know that goes against the grain of some people. She is 4.5 years old. Or maybe she's 5. So she's not young. I am not really much an advocate of getting young dogs fixed, even though there's a lot of people who believe you should spay or neuter your animals right away. But I do think there's a lot of cons to that in their growth, in their health, in their future health. So I do prefer, if we're going to do that, they need to be older. Because she's a farm dog, runs around, things like that, we don't want to have to take those chances for her getting with another dog. One time we had a German Shepherd that, even though it was in our yard and we were in the farm, it did get out, got with another dog, a male dog, when she was in season. We didn't catch it in time, get her put up, and she ended up with a crippling, deadly disease. The vet told us that was what it was from, another dog. We do not want that to happen to Emma, so we decided not to keep taking chances and go ahead and get her fixed. She's doing well. She's recovering well. The only thing she doesn't like is the cone on her head. She looks absolutely pitiful. She looks pitiful. She hates it. She looks at us like, please take this off, or why are you punishing me? That is so hard for us. But she needs it on for a week just because she doesn't need to be able to get to the stitches and break them open again. So we have to make the best decision for her, just like parents have to do for their kids. They know what's best. They have to make the best decision. We're making the best decision and stewarding our animals properly. So she has to have it on for a few more days, then she should be good to go. So more news here on Easy Farms. It doesn't have to do with our actual farm, but it has to do with our family. Our daughter, the one that you heard on a few clips back, not you heard her, but you heard us talk about her, moving her down to Florida. She is getting married. She got engaged, and it was very much a big surprise to her. She was so excited. We were a part of all that. Her fiance that we love dearly, he just included us in and had a wonderful surprise engagement, included family, included everybody, got all of it on video. It was beautiful. She was just thrilled, and we just love him dearly. They're going to get married this summer in a small family wedding, nothing really big and elaborate. They don't want to really wait very long, and we're pleased with that. We're excited about them starting their life together and moving on with that. So that's good news for all of us, and it'll be something we'll talk about later on this summer after that happens. And we are excited that we can share that with everyone. So moving on to our topic today. Our topic today is going to be raised bed garden, in-ground garden, and bucket gardening. And we know right now people are already getting started. Some of them have already had their plans, been seeding out for a long time, already know what they're going to do. But I know there's people out there that still are trying to figure out what they want, maybe thinking about changing a few things this summer, maybe adding a few more things. So let's just talk a little bit about that. First, I just want to go back on some of our personal experiences. We moved to our homestead and we told our journey. First, for anybody that's just now listening for the first time, if you want to go back to not the intro episode, but the next episode, we tell some of our journey of where we came from and how we got to homesteading. One day we'll pick up the rest of our journey and keep going with that. But just to say a little bit about all of that, we have been moved to the country and started homesteading. And for 25 years, as far as moving to the country, we've been out into the farm for about 25 years. We did start a little bit, back when our backyard with some gardening buckets and things like that. So we started doing all that stuff before that when our kids were all little. But what we did was we started, when we first moved out, the first thing I thought, besides the typical thing that most people do, they want to get some chickens, which is the easiest. I do recommend if you're going to get any kind of livestock or any of that, go for the chickens. They're definitely the most easiest to care for. And so that was one of the first things we did. But as far as gardening goes, I asked my husband to build us a raised bed box. I didn't know what to do with it. We didn't have a tiller. We didn't have anything to get anything in the ground. So that was the first thought I had. And he built something that was really nice. It wasn't very big. It was just something I wanted to put a few tomatoes in. And it looked really, really great. But one thing I didn't recognize, here I am sitting out in the blazing sun. We're in the blazing heat of the summer. And I have 4 little kids, out of sight, out of mind. It was really easy to let the soil dry. And that's one of the things that happens with a raised bed or bucket, especially this was more of a kind of like our off-ground raised bed. So it was a mixture of a pretty raised bed, off-ground bucket thing. It's hard to picture, but it did dry out. It does dry out a little easier. So that was my first experience. I probably got a few tomatoes off of it, but that was mainly because of my busyness and lack of paying attention. Then eventually I had him put me in we rented a tiller. I think we had a tractor. Yeah, because we had 5 acres. So I think we had a tractor, but didn't have any kind of tiller, didn't have a hand tiller. So we rented a tiller. And next year he tilled me up a little patch of the ground. And once again, I just fumbled around with it, trying to figure it out, put some plants in the ground, typical things like tomatoes and cucumbers and, I don't know, maybe watermelon, because that's one of my favorite, and cantaloupe. And did all that. And then I dealt with the woes and the pluses of those. And then eventually, as the years went on, we moved, and then we did get a tiller, and we tilled a much bigger garden. Now, anybody that knows my husband knows, and if you don't know my husband, he is a kind of a go big or go home guy. Even when it's not always great to go big, that's just what he likes to do. And he tilled this massive garden. Oh my goodness, we had no idea the work. It sounded so good at first, but the work behind it, geez Louise, it was a whole lot to do. Oh my goodness, tackling the weeds, planting everything. But we had a major harvest because the kids were in on it with us. We got out early in the morning. We worked in the garden, got our hands still dirty a lot, and then started harvesting all of that. And then eventually I thought, I need a place for herbs, not just a few pots. I need a place. I really want to grow some herbs, combination of herbs in some boxes. So I had him build me some boxes. Unfortunately, nobody told me about mint. So I put peppermint, a couple plants of peppermint. These were 2 4x4 boxes, and I put a couple plants of peppermint in one of them along with some other things. Those peppermints took the whole entire box. I could not uproot them. I could not. The roots were just all the way to the ground. They took the whole thing. And the other box did pretty good. But eventually I realized, I'm not sure if I like these boxes. And that wasn't the box's fault. It was the gardener's fault. So then we ended up doing more doing more in-ground, a lot more in-ground and less boxes at that time. And then let's fast forward. Here we are 25 years later, and we are switching over time to raised beds. Not because it's bad green ground or bucket gardening is bad. It's a preference to anybody, whatever they prefer. And my preference for my reasons, and I'll share those, is to start converting over more and more and more to raised beds. It's more convenient on me, easier on the body, things like that. Less on the weeds, but we're going to talk more about that as we move further into this podcast. So let's start off just a little bit about in-ground gardening. In-ground gardening, some of the cons and the pros to both of these. One thing about in-ground gardening, for anybody that doesn't know, I'm sure pretty much everybody does know, but basically you're just putting it directly into the ground. It's best to till the soil unless you are going for a no-till garden. And just look that up. I don't want to go into all of that, what a no-till garden is, but it is a way that you can move into that. People have a lot of different ideas with that. If I start, matter of fact, it's not even if, I do want to move toward a no-till garden, but it's going to be the type of no-till garden where we start building on top of the soil with good wood chips, mulch, and compost. Things like that can start composting together the top of the soil, so we don't have to till into the garden. However, without that, people that want to go into the in-ground garden, you pretty much need a tiller. Now, I know you can use a shovel and you can use a little hand type tiller thing that can till some of that. Some people in some area of the country have really great soil that will till up a lot easier. But some people live in other areas of the country where it is packed down soil, and those things are just not going to work as well. It's going to be just back-breaking work, and it'd be easier to give up on that garden, or at least it would be for me. So you need some kind of tiller. Some of them can be hand crank tillers. The more you till in your garden year after year, spring and fall, if you're going to do fall planting, then what happens to the soil is it does start to get more pliable. It does start to get easier, and you don't need a heavy duty tiller, whether it be behind your tractor or whether it be a hand push tiller, gas powered tiller that you push, or an electric tiller. Excuse me. And so, but what you would need to do is you need to start breaking the ground somehow. And what happens in an in-ground garden when you start breaking ground is you activate the weeds that are not growing yet. You start activating what is down there, the seeds that are down there. You start giving them light. You start giving them air. You start giving them what they need to start growing. So there's so many people that go, oh my goodness, why is it that the weeds in my garden are so much stronger than the weeds in my yard? That is going to be your reason. And so that's one of the cons to it. You're going to need to till the garden in some way. Excuse me. And it is going to activate the weeds. I cannot talk about the frustration of weeds enough. So I don't want this to be a totally negative podcast, but oh my goodness, if I wanted to go negative, I could definitely talk about weeds. Now, there are ways to help on the weeds, help tame the weeds. So if you're going to till your garden and do like some rows, and you may want to take a hoe and row up those rows, and that makes it a lot easier to get some good loose soil for your plants to go in and do all that. Then you can buy ground cloths. You can buy plastic, like black plastic, the real thick, heavy duty rolls of it. You can do that. That would be more disposable. You can go on Amazon or some gardening centers or some great websites and buy ground cloth. You can put that down. We have ground cloth. We do reuse it every year. And so you can cut holes in it. It comes with stakes to stake it down to hold, and that will help. You can do your whole garden in that. The con about all that is the cost. Typically, an in-ground garden wouldn't have as much cost, but if you want to do that, then you're going to invest in some cost, and that's okay. That's what you can do, and you got the money for that, then go for it. And it will save you a lot of mental anguish on some weeds. I can promise you that. But So a few more cons is, oh, wait a minute. Before I go to that, also one of the things we did is we saved newspaper. We have friends, we don't really order the newspaper, but we have some that order it, and we've had people save us newspaper. And then we've laid newspaper, like thick newspaper, around our plants, around the rows, and then filled it all with straw, and just filled it with straw. And that's helpful too. Things like that is helpful. You can put wood chips down. You can just put straw down. You can put the ground cloth down. That's going to help hold back your weeds, and more straw and stuff like that. You can, and mulch you can put around your plant. The base of your plant is going to help with water retention. It's going to help holding back the dirt and the stuff that splashes up on the bottom leaves, which can cause rot and pest disease on your leaves, things like that. That'll help. Also, don't forget, it's always good to break off all those bottom stems. It's hard because you think, oh, this is great growth, but break them off. You'll be thankful in the end, because that will help. Because once rain starts hitting and stuff starts splashing up, it can start bringing disease to your plants. You don't want that. That's just a side note. But another con for in-ground gardening is it's hard on the body. You're doing a lot of bending and stooping and squatting. It can get hard on the knees, hard on the back, things like that. That really can get a little challenging. And the older you get, the more challenging that does get. Another con to in-ground is the pests and the bugs, or can be a little, it can be a little more in in-ground gardening, because they live in the soil. And your plant is right there at the soil level. So they live in the ground, in the soil of the ground. I mean, not just all soil. I mean, they do, but the soil that's in the earth that you've got down in the ground with the plants, the bugs just live there. That's their habitat where they live. And you're going to see a lot of that. Now, don't worry about some bugs. Some bugs are great for the garden. And remember, if you do have bugs in the garden, you have life in the garden. So it can be an irritating thing, because some of them just really eat at your plants and you don't like it. But at the same time, there's life in the garden. So, just look toward how to get rid of some of those bugs, and that works. Side note, this year I'm going to try something I've never tried before, because squash bugs are absolutely the worst to me, and they invaded way too much last year than they've ever done. And I even try to rotate gardening, but it doesn't matter. You can go across an acre and a squash bug's going to find that plant and all those plants in that family. So I saw a bug vacuum, and I know that sounds silly, but I'm going to give this doggone thing a try. I'm going to have it on hand. It's going to the garden with me, and I'm going to see if I can just suck those things up, get those away from my squash. However, so we talked about cons, having to till the garden, hard on the body, pests, bugs, down in the soil. It holds a lot. The pro is it holds water, but because your ground can hold a lot of water, you could also have a little more issues with root rot. So there is a nice, perfect balance of the water ratio. So that will throw that in the con and the pros is the water, but also the weeds. Those are some of the cons. Also, you may not have the right drainage runoff. Don't forget that. You get a lot of rain in the spring. Your garden's just out there, and a lot of it, and you may not have the best runoff, and that can cause more root rot and issues too. Too much water on the roots and kill the plants. However, there is still, in the end of it, the pros outweigh the cons. And so one of it is some soils hold good water. In different parts of the country, some hold good water, and it helps hold in, so you're not having to water all the time, especially when you get to the dry part of the summer. And it's a low cost startup. You can start up an in-ground garden for just next to nothing practically. If you do have a shovel, you don't have a tiller, and you don't want a big garden, and you have a shovel or some little hand way to kind of till up a space to put your plants in, and you don't mind doing that, you can start that garden just for the cost of practically seeds and soil. And that's about it. You can move an in-ground garden around. You don't like where you had it one year, let the grass and the weeds grow back over it, and you can move that to another spot the next year. You can plant a whole lot in an in-ground garden. if I have a 30-foot row, I'm going to put 20 plus tomato plants in that row. Maybe, probably over 20 plants. I haven't really thought about the math right now, but it's also great for very large plants like zucchini and squash, watermelon, cantaloupe, other melons, those pumpkins, those kind of things grow very big. The zucchini and squash grow very, very big. You can also trellis them, but they grow very big, and you can just let them spread on out in an in-ground garden. And you can just let those tomatoes, and I don't mean tomatoes, but the cucumbers and melons and things like that grow across the ground. They can grow across the ground if you don't want to trellis them. There, you got a lot of space in that. So those are the good things. It's the low cost. They're movable. You can plant a lot. Typically, plants do, unless you just have terrible soil, plants do really well. But you can turn around and put really good soil in those holes that you have to put your plants in and help that out. So you really have some good reasons to do an in-ground garden if you're able to do that. All right, so moving on to bucket gardening. Bucket gardening, I'm going to start with the pros because there are a lot of pros to bucket gardening. One thing about bucket gardening is if you have pots, you have big pots, things like that you're not using, or you can go to garage sales and get them. Also, just a reminder, we collected buckets from things like delis that, like sub shops and places like that. I know also there was a bake shop that had icing, and they bought buckets of icing, big, like 5-gallon, 4-gallon buckets of icing, and they got rid of those. And these sub shops get rid of like big, like 4-gallon, 5-gallon buckets full of pickles and things like that. And they'll give them away for free. So if you don't have the money to turn around and spend on these planter pots, don't worry about it. Just take some time and go around to these places, ask them if you can get them, and then go pick them up when they're ready. You can do that. You can also go to Lowe's or any other hardware store and buy 5-gallon buckets. You can get the food grade buckets from them and get those. You can use those. Just make sure all of them have drain holes. Just drill some holes in the bottom of them. So this is a pro to getting started with bucket gardening. You can just use you can make a pretty design out of them in your yard. And I'm not saying 5-gallon buckets and pickle buckets are going to be your best design, but if you have planter pots and you can afford really nice planter pots, I've seen people turn around and growing flowers in some, tomatoes in some, cucumbers in some, and they just put a little trellis in there to trellis up the cucumbers, have peppers in some, and flowers in another one. And they just make this gorgeous looking section in their yard that's all bucket gardening. And it's just so beautiful. And their flowers track the pollinators. And it's just lovely to see. They're great for if you have balconies or patios, backyards, things like that. If you don't have the space or don't want to, you want to just try out, just gardening, and you don't want to go through all the tilling and doing everything, raised beds and all that. You just want to see something very affordable and just say, hey, I'm just going to make it real simple the first year. It's great on weed control. Also, hey, I remember some friends of ours from years ago, they've really mastered growing their business and gardening big time over the years, but they first got started in bucket gardening, and they lived in a subdivision in the backyard. In their backyard, they had everything you could possibly grow. They tried it in a bucket garden, and they had them all along the fence, and they put some trellises next to their, wood fence in their backyard so things could grow up next to that. And it was really cool what they were all doing. They were trying to figure it all out and having fun with it. Then eventually they moved out to the country and they expanded everything and ended up getting a nice business going with that. One thing about bucket gardening is it helps with root rot. We talked about root rot a minute ago, where it holds just too much water. Make sure you have drain holes once again. When the water can go on out, and that can help with root rot in some of your plants. And that's really good. Also, pest control, all of that. Those things are bonuses for bucket gardening. You can move them around. You're done with it. You're over it. You can just get rid of it. You can shift it to another part of the yard. It's just trial and error, not a lot of cost into it. You can make it more costly. That's up to you how you want it to look. But some of the cons in it is the fact that the biggest con I would say in it, and it's going to be with a lot of things, is your startup costs mainly with the soil that you need. Now, you could go to the store and just get a good organic potting soil, but I like to do a one third, one third, one third mixture, basically of a good quality potting soil, compost. If you get a compost in a bag, then make sure you read what's in it and make sure it's a good quality compost. I don't just buy just any compost at the store. So look at that, and sand. You mix all that up. That's going to be a great mixture for your potting, your buckets or your pots, or even in your some of your raised beds. But so the cons would be all that startup for your buckets. That's not a lot of cost. You got 50 buckets out there. Yes, it's a lot of cost. You got 7 or 8 out there. No, it's not a whole lot of cost. One of the other cons is you do have to water them a lot. The water doesn't hold in there like it will hold in the ground. So you do have to, do a lot more watering. And there are some plants that could be too large for bucket gardening. I'm not going to say they always are, but if you're not used to trellising squash or any of that, then that may do better in a ground. But if you want to give a hand at trying to trellis your squash, and let me think what else is so big for it. I'm not even sure. Some things you may only have one per bucket. Like if you want okra, I don't see people putting two stalks in one 5-gallon bucket. So that would be one stalk per bucket. And that's the other con to it, is it'd be more like one tomato plant per bucket, one okra plant per bucket, one pepper plant per bucket. You may can get a couple of green beans in one bucket. Some plants do really well just growing, but like my daughter was doing buckets, doing planters and stuff like that. And I was like, well, you know what? Put your tomato plant in there, and then around the edges, put a oregano and see how that grows with it. It'll help with bugs. It's companion planting. And you can see how well it does in the size. Does the tomatoes have enough room? Does the oregano have enough room? And then another one, maybe she just want to put just a tomato, and she can test it all out. Once again, those are the pros. Obviously, I'm speaking a lot more pros and cons in bucket gardening, but it can, that's really it. Water a lot. There's a startup cost. If you don't want to go around trying to collect some free buckets, there's that startup cost, the soil cost, and you can't put as much plants in there. You're going to have a lot smaller amount. But once again, our friends, they had a whole backyard full, and they did that. So I'm seeing there's a lot more pros to it, but hey, you're going to just see what works for you in all this. And let's just move on to raised bed gardening. Now, some of the pros I'll tell you what, let me just talk with some of the cons with raised bed gardening. Your number one con to raised bed gardening is going to be your cost, your setup and your cost. That's your main thing. You've got the cost of the bed. You've got the cost of, you're not looking at a 5-gallon bucket now. Now you're looking at a possible 4x4, 12-inch high, 24-inch high box, depending on how deep you want it, because some plants need a lot more root system and some do not. So you're looking at a 4x4, you're looking at a 4x8, 3x7, 2x8, 2x4, depending on how you want that and what you buy, what you build. Building it is definitely going to be a lot more cost efficient, purchasing as opposed to purchasing somebody else's kit that you can buy. Kits are going to be a lot more easier to do. You may not have the setup or somebody that knows what they're doing or have the ability to do all that. But if you do, look into the wood. One thing about the wood is over the years, first you don't want treated wood. That's what most people would want. Now, I'm going to stop for just a second and just say this. If you do get treated wood, I do know people who've done treated wood and they line the whole inside of their beds with some type of quality liner. Just look into that. We've never done that. So I'm just saying that's possibly an option. So look into that, because you don't want the chemicals in the treated wood leaching into your soil and into your plants. I don't know how well those liners work, so that's just food for thought. I'm not saying that's the way to go. So do your own research in that one. But If you do, you don't want treated wood, and you look into the wood that you want. Some people get pine, some people get cypress. Cypress is more expensive. Some people get, I guess, I don't know, oak, whatever, different things. Over time, because it's not treated, it will rot. So you have to replace the wood. So just consider that. It can last a good several years before you have to do that. But then some people have metal ones that they purchase from people. And those are great. You can buy kits off Amazon. Believe it or not, we have some actual raised beds that I'm going to be changing out, but it was in a moment where we had IBC tote tanks. And when I wanted some more beds and we didn't have enough of the kit that I have, my husband, Les cut them in half and put drain holes in them, and we turned those into raised beds. So you could actually find IBC tote tanks. People sell them all day long on Facebook Marketplace, for $50, and you can cut one in half. There's 2 beds. Just know what was inside that tote tank. What if it was a chemical, or was it a nutrient? Was it organic? Those are important. You want to know that. Clean it out really good. Get you some holes in it. Voila, you got yourself a very affordable 4x4, pretty much a 4x4 raised bed. It's great. They've been great for us. Just want to change those out. I'm not as crazy about the aesthetics of them, but they've been fine. The only reason I'm changing them out is because we just happen to have some we can put together, and I think I'm going to put them in that space where those are. With that though, like I said, the cost is your biggest issue. I've seen raised beds get very costly, but once again, some of them made out of great material. You're never going to be replacing it, and that does make a difference. Also, don't forget, to help with the cost is your layering method. Doing things like put down a ground cloth barrier or cardboard, something like that. Layer the bottom, layer the next with wood, old wood. Go buy non-treated fireplace wood, limbs from other people's cleanup yards, whatever. You can throw all that in there. Pick up leaves in the fall time. Throw bags of leaves in there. Then put your soil mixture in there. That will save you so much money, because most all that stuff is free, and you can just drive down the street and people got bags of leaves out, throw them in your vehicle, go home with them, put them in there. They work great. We've been doing that and we love it. Now, over time, that'll start to pack down, and that's fine. You just have to every year start adding, which you're going to do this anyhow. You want to add more nutrients back to the soil, whether it's in ground or raised bed. So you'll add some more compost and things like that through the years. The only other couple of cons to a raised bed would be it's more permanent. It's a lot harder to move a raised bed. Or remember when I said earlier in our gardening life, where my husband Les built the 4x4s, where we had the mint fiasco, where I talked about earlier. We tried to move those. Actually, we did move them, but it was a big deal to move them. We didn't want to move them. We just wanted to get rid of those at that time. And it really was a big deal to move it, a little labor intensive. So that's one of the cons to it. But going real quick to some of the pros to raised beds, you can make your own soil mixture, and you can improve on it every year. You can add compost, leaves, straw, things that you want to put in it on top of it to winter over the winter, and build compost into the soil so you're ready for spring if you don't want to plant anything that winter. It helps reduce weeds. It helps reduce pests in that. Last year, I raised tomatoes in my raised beds, and one thing that I do in the raised beds is I do a lot of companion planting, which is harder to do in grounds, because in-ground gardening, I do more rows. And even though you may want to, every 2 plants, plant a magnolia, flower. I mean, not magnolia, for crying out loud, marigold. Plant next to your tomatoes, or maybe on the row across from it, plant some basil. It's a lot more, it just doesn't flow as nicely. And it's a little harder to keep up with it like that. At least it is for me. But I noticed in my raised beds, I can do a lot of companion planting. Like right now, I have a raised bed that has tomato plants. They're indeterminate, so they're going to grow over an archway to the next raised bed next to it. But also next to it, I have some basil. I have a marigold plant. I have some carrots in there. I have green beans that are growing in between the carrot parts, so that way it'll shade the carrots for the summer so they can keep growing. I have at one end, I have oregano and some sage and I think another marigold plant. I don't think I'm going to have a bug one in that bed. It's going to be enough stuff to help deter the bugs and help my everything just start growing nicely. It looks gorgeous too. I love it. And you can do a lot more companion planting in raised beds with that. They're really easy to work with. They're not as hard on your body. You can put your raised beds up at, about 2 feet high or even higher. I've seen some that go up to, 30 inches or maybe more if you want. It's up to you what you want to build. And to make it real easy, I have a set of raised beds that I happened to see at the homesteading conference one year. And I think it was a conference in the Ozarks. Wonderful conference. It was done in the spring. And we bought them. The guy set up there, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, or I'll give a shout out to his name so you can go to him. But I'll try to remember it and put it in the notes. But he had benches, like wood benches around the beds. And oh my goodness, you couldn't ask for a better raised bed for me. I could sit on that bench and lean over and work in the beds. It was great. And you can make it aesthetically beautiful. I have arches growing between my cattle panel arches where my tomatoes and cucumbers and green beans grow on. This year or next year, we're going to finish up a section in it. And I want lights to go out there that's set on a timer. For me, you can do arch trellises. We do cattle panels, but you can do something a lot more beautiful in there. You can do a lot of vertical growing in raised beds just for the trellises that you can do. Now, I know some of these things I said can work with a bucket and work with the in-ground, but they do flow and work beautifully with the raised bed very nicely. And don't forget, you can build your raised bed to the size you want. You can build it at 12 inches off the ground, 30 inches off the ground, 2x4, 2x8, 4x4, 4x8, any of that kind of stuff. I wouldn't go wider than that. It's harder to get to the center and work. So you want to make sure you have the right spacing on each side. You can set it up, make it look beautiful. You can put a pretty design. You do want to think out where you want it because it is very hard to move. It's not as easy to move them. You can move them, but it's just not as easy. It does hold down weeds and hold down pests, and you can amend the soil very easy. So that's those things about raised beds, buckets, in-ground. Those are some of the pros and cons. I would love to hear from you on that. You could tell me anything about your story, any of that. We can give a shout out to you, what you did. If you have any great ideas or any other pros and cons that I didn't mention in here, you could do that. We could please do that. We appreciate it. If you don't mind us using your name, we will. We use first and last or just first, where you're from, any of that. You can go to our Easy Farms Homestead on Instagram. That's Easy Farms Homestead on Instagram. And follow us there. You can go back on some of my videos and see some of our gardening when we set it up, how it looks, things like that. Some that I'll post this year. Please don't forget to follow what do we do on Instagram? I think follow and like. Yes, you do that on Instagram. Please do that. Go in and DM me there for information. If you want to ask a question, if you want to give us some of your story, please go there and DM me. Also, to help us, Les and I have had multiple years of homesteading. We have not only the what to do's, we have all the, wow, that sure didn't work out right for us, and what not to do's. We have probably just as much of those as the success stories, but that's what comes along with this life, right? And anything. And we decided we wanted to do this podcast to get some of our information out there that we've experienced, some of our experience, get to know other people. And so we'd appreciate it if you would follow us and share this, share it with your friends, share it anywhere. We appreciate it. And once again, go to our Instagram and DM us. We're also on Facebook at Ezekiel Farms. That's where easy comes from. But it's a play on words, making it look easy. It's not always quite so easy. But yeah, follow us there on Facebook at Ezekiel Farms. And we would sure appreciate to hear from you. Ask us some questions. We'd love it. And it's been truly a pleasure hanging out with you today. Thank you so much for your patience that Les hasn't been here. He'll try to join back next time. There will be some podcasts where he won't be here. And we don't have a lot of days to get the projects done. And to try to throw a podcast recording and all the projects in one day can always be a little tricky and harder on us. So today he had to opt out of this one, and that's okay. And we just appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. We enjoyed having you with us, and have a great week. Have a great day, and just have a wonderful day. Signing off here on Easy Farms. This is Christy saying goodbye.